Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. After Lai Ching-te won Taiwan's presidential election on January 13th, many countries congratulated him on his victory, including from the US, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, from the UK, Foreign Secretary David Cameron and former Prime Minister, and from Japan, Foreign Minister Kamikawa Yoko. But it seems no message rattled Beijing more than that of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Philippine president, who said, "We look forward to close collaboration with Taiwan, strengthening mutual interests, fostering peace and ensuring prosperity for our peoples in the years ahead." Chinese spokesperson Mao Ning countered with this. Take a look.
马克思总统的有关言论严重违反一个中国原则和中非建交公报，严重违背非方对中方所做的政治承诺，粗暴干涉中国内政。我们正告非方，不要在台湾问题上玩火，停止向台独分裂势力发出任何错误信号。我们建议马克思总统多读读书，正确了解台湾问题的来龙去脉，从而得出正确的结论。
In response to this, Philippine Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro, who doesn't mince his words, said it is unfortunate that the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson stooped to such a low, gutter-level talk, resorting to insulting our president and the Filipino people and debasing herself, the ministry and party she represents in the process. Joining us to discuss what this all means is Tony Hu, former US Department of Defense Senior Director for China, Taiwan and Mongolia, and Ronan Fu, Academia Sinica Institute of Political Science Assistant Research Fellow. Very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. So Tony, let's start with you first. So firstly, what was behind Marcos's congratulations?
Well, during the past few years, China had put Philippines in a very difficult situation. Their aggressive action caused Marcos to feel that he must stand very strong in front of China, not only to demonstrate to China that the Philippines is not going to be the weaker partner, but also to demonstrate to his own people that he's going to stand up for the Philippines. So he is trying to demonstrate that he's not going to restrain himself just to make China happy. Basically, Marcos is trying to show China that Philippines will act on its own interest.
Okay. Ronan, what message do you think that he was trying to send China, Xi Jinping?
Yeah, so before sending the message to Xi Jinping, actually, I think this message is intended to send it to its domestic audiences, basically trying to tell the Filipino people that we'll be siding with the countries that feel the same, that's facing the same struggle. So this country means Taiwan, right? And the message is also being sent to the US, saying that we'll be siding with you. So if you choose to side with Taiwan, we'll side with Taiwan. If you guys continue to act assertively and aggressively, you're going to face a lot of enemies. Thank you.
Okay, and yet, Tony, in June 2023, there was an interview with Joseph Wu in the Philippine Star, in that he talked about, perhaps considering between the Philippines and Taiwan some cooperation. He mentioned disaster relief, security, and also Coast Guard cooperation. But the Defense Secretary, Gilbert Teodoro, was very firm in saying that there can be zero possibility in defense cooperation. So do you see this as a different position?
Actually, what he's talking about is specifically defense related. Obviously, Taiwan and Philippines has many other areas of cooperation. Defense is a little bit difficult because truly, if you look at what Taiwan can do to help Philippines, Taiwan is not expeditionary. They're not going to go. Philippines won't be able to help Taiwan truly in a military sense. So the only possibility is maybe information exchange on the intelligence side, and that might even be going through the US as intermediary. So
not Coast Guard?
Well, Coast Guard for humanitarian events, a disaster relief type thing, it's possible. However, it's an area that can be, but it's not specifically defense related. It's a rescue, humanitarian related. So,
but I don't think that Joseph Wu only focused on defense, whereas Teodoro obviously does that because he's the defense secretary.
Exactly, that's my point.
So maybe Ronan, do you think that where do you think Marcos intended when he said that He's looking forward to cooperation.
We have to bear in mind that actually the Philippines, when it comes to defense, there are all other good alternatives. Countries such as the United States, Japan, and Australia. So when it comes to defense, Taiwan is not the top priority as a country to be cooperating with. But when it comes to, for example, disaster relief and some very low-level coastal guard cooperation, I think I echo Tony's assessment that it is possible. And I think Marcos' intent is to send a very signal that we'll be willing to cooperate with Taiwan so long as the issue is not that politically sensitive.
What do you think it was that upset the Chinese so much? Do you think it was, his use of the language close collaboration, Tony, strengthening mutual interests, fostering peace?
I suspect all of those, because
is it targeted? They can see it's targeted at
China.
Perhaps at
exactly.
China?
Remember, China is trying to isolate Taiwan. Anytime any country talk about cooperation with Taiwan, makes them very unhappy, especially Philippines. Philippines plays a crucial role in the defense of Taiwan, because the friends of Taiwan, when they come to this area to help Taiwan, they're gonna need places to settle down, and Philippines most likely will be that place. So this type of relationship and this type of forward-leaning remarks by the Philippines, I suspect worries China very much.
Okay. Yeah. Now, to get the perspective from the Philippines, I spoke to Justin Baquisal, an independent security analyst based in Manila. In our discussion, he tells me that Manila's plans to develop its islands and features will be the next flashpoint in the South China Sea. But first, I ask him what he thinks was behind Marcos's congratulations to Lai.
Well, first of all, it's a very clear signal that Marcos is pushing back against Beijing's attempts to embarrass his administration. So one major factor is the series of recurring tensions in the South China Sea in recent months, including the water cannoning by the Chinese Coast Guard and also the harassment of the recent civilian-led tours to Philippine-claimed features in the South China Sea. There is also the political dimension. So last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping had a surprise meeting with former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte without informing the Philippine government. And that happened during a time when there were tensions in the Second Thomas Shoal. So undoubtedly, of course, Marcos is dialing up the tension with China by sending this very clear signal of his displeasures. The Philippine Foreign Affairs Ministry has actually stated that it continues to affirm the One China policy of the Philippines.
And could you tell us what actually is in the Philippines' One China policy?
So it has two very basic principles. Number one is the recognition of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. And then secondly, and a more diminished line there is the Philippines understands and respects, but does not necessarily follow the position of the People's Republic of China with respect to the Taiwan issue. And then thirdly, what this means is that there continue to be people-to-people commercial and cultural relations between the Philippines and Taiwan. There are over 200,000 migrant Filipino workers in Taiwan, which is more than what we have with mainland China, actually. So that is an important relationship that the Philippines also has to manage. So the Philippines is just balancing its relations.
What do you make of the announcement that the Philippines will begin to develop the islands and features within their territory in the South China Sea? Is this playing China at its own game?
This is not China's playbook per se. This is really what any self-respecting country is going to do. So interestingly, in trying to prevent the resupply of a single Filipino facility, it created blowback in the Philippines. People were outraged that China did not try to allow resupply missions, and therefore the Philippines will now construct multiple facilities in these claimed features and territories.
Second Thomas Shoal, where resupplies of food, medical is being hindered by the Chinese when it comes to trying to supply construction materials. Assumedly, there would be even more resistance to that. So practically, how do you think that could occur?
There is an allocation in 2024 already to construct that facility in Second Thomas Shoal. So it's really only a matter of time, right? So this is really the next conflict flashpoint in the region, more than the individual resupply missions. But of course, there's a certain hypocrisy there because China itself has constructed and militarized many areas of the South China Sea. So what the Philippines needs is not just a ship that's temporarily grounded in that facility, and that ship is rusting away, the BRP Sierra Madre. It needs to construct facilities that will pave the way for a permanent and increasing Philippine presence in the area. So most likely what the Philippines will be doing is to construct desalination facilities and barracks in the area to get troops on the ground. And then the higher end, of course, would be, and probably this will come in the second phase of that, would be constructing ports and, of course, other facilities that could host military materials.
That was independent security analyst Justin Baquisal speaking to me earlier from Jakarta. Tony, so we heard there from Justin that Manila wants to increase the presence and make it permanent in its territory, the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, and that future stages will include building ports and then possibly military bases. So what do you think of this strategy?
I think they saw China use the same strategy to reinforce its claim, its legal claims. So Philippines has to do the same because those artificial islands that China has established, and if you look at it, they build runways, they build significant living quarters, more than what the military needs. I suspect soon you're going to see Chinese fishermen from Hainan Island and from Guangdong to move there so that to solidify China's claim of ownership. Philippines has to do that. They feel they must do the same. And start landfilling and start building up on those small shores that belongs to them.
So taking a leaf out of China's book, essentially. Yeah. Ronan, so you heard Justin saying that he believes that this will become the next flashpoint rather than just a resupply of a particular island.
It's a security dilemma where country basically trying just to be defensive, but in return they are going to respond in escalation. Yeah, so like the escalation after escalation will basically lead to a very, very unfortunate spiral. But I agree with Tony that it's actually like a reaction to what China has been doing for the past couple of years. So what Philippines trying to do is to assert sovereignty and make sure that their permanent presence in the region can be acknowledged.
Okay, now let's discuss the very recent, Ronan, the very recent resupply of Second Thomas Shoal. This was slightly different from the usual attempt. Can you tell us about how the Philippines achieved this?
Yes, basically it's technology provided by the US. They're able to make it happen using the low altitude airdrops to basically complete the resupply mission. And
we've got some footage, some stills there showing the operation in place, bags being dropped and then retrieved, floating devices. And so this is an ingenious new way to avoid those Chinese militia, fishing vessels and the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, if I may. The aircraft actually is a de Havilland Twin Otter. It's a twin-engine aircraft. It can fly very slowly. So it was misidentified in the news report. However, Philippines figured out if they use maritime resupply, the Chinese maritime militias are waiting for them because they loiter, these fishing boats. Aircraft...
There's like 100 of them in that area.
Yeah, hundreds of them in that area. Aircraft, if they want to intercept, their airplane cannot loiter. It just don't have enough gas. So if they don't know when Filipino is going to show up, an airplane can get there before the Chinese aircraft can react. So this is ingenious on the Filipino part, and I suspect they'll continue to use this. If Chinese want to stop this, they going to have to find a way to ensure this. They deploy aircraft to those islands, the artificial islands that they build that has runway, and start using those for military purpose. And that's what they specifically say they won't do.
Ronan.
Yeah, so just want to add one more point that is also a clear indication of avoidance of escalation.
Yes.
And trying to make it happen, make the resupply happen, while not provoking China.
Without provoking China. But Tony just said something very interesting. Very last sentence, you said China promised not to
militarize those islands, and of course, we have seen deployment of military aircraft and missiles.
So the promise is already broken, though.
They're already broken, so I fully expect them to deploy military aircraft on those islands. And once they detect Filipino aircraft take off, this resupply aircraft has to fly very slow in order to make the airdrop successful. So during that 100-some mile journey, the Chinese can detect and probably send up intercepts. But once again, this is going to escalate. However, Roland's right. Filipinos did this to avoid direct confrontation because there have been too many direct confrontation on the maritime side. So they devised this method. And unfortunately, I suspect China will come up with a counter fairly soon and confrontation continues.
Is there actually higher risk if it's in the air, Tony?
It is a high risk as far as safety goes.
Yeah.
Where if you're on the ship, you come over, you spray water. But if airplane falls out of the sky, people die. So it is a high risk.
So recently, the Philippines and China agreed to improve communication and resolve disputes in friendly consultation following a regular meeting in Shanghai. However, just days after that, Philippine fishermen who were collecting shells at Scarborough Shoal were harassed by the Chinese Coast Guard, who forced them to drop the shells and were chased away. Now, Scarborough Shoal is a traditional fishing ground to be shared between the Philippines, China and Vietnam. That's according to the 2016 UN arbitral ruling. So, Ronan, does this surprise you, this incident coming so close after a supposed meeting where the two sides agreed to be friendly and communicative?
Yeah, so like in China is a problem of fragmented authoritarianism. Basically, even if the central government is trying to strike a deal and trying to maintain an amicable relationship with some foreign countries, it could be the case that this policy has not been implemented by other lower authorities, such as Coast Guard. So it could be the case that it's just an incident. It's not an indication of the Chinese will be implemented in this region, but it also indicates that the foundation for cooperation is rather quite fragile.
All right. So do we expect an apology from the Chinese towards the Philippines?
I don't see that. They never apologize.
No, but if it was simply, somebody who didn't get the message, didn't get the memo,
they won't do it. They will toughen it up. If anything at all, when they make a mistake, they ratchet up. they continue down that erroneous way.
Okay. So you expect that fishermen will continue to be harassed?
I would think so.
If I may, also basically you have to show Beijing some very clear sign that the Philippines is willing to cooperate with China more, so that they are willing to change their policy. So, for example, if the Philippines is trying to re-establish much more closer ties with China rather than the U.S., then that could happen. But as of now, the Philippines is trying to maintain a very close security ties with the U.S., so that will never happen.
There's the UK and Canada defense pacts that have been signed with them between the Philippines and these two countries. What exactly do these cover, and how significant is this, Tony?
Well, it's very significant because Philippines knows if they want to negotiate with China, they have to come from a position of strength. They themselves don't have that strength. They rely on friends. So these memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation with Canada and United Kingdom is very critical. It covers not only military training, information exchanges, probably in the intelligence side, and peacekeeping operation, disaster relief, even in terms of military modernization. Okay, I think it's very significant because Philippines usually only does that with the United States. They have expanded out to two of the United States' closest friends who expects to be involved if anything happens in South China Sea. And also...
They expect to be involved, did you say? The UK?
I believe so. If you look at the recent incidences where British ships have sailed through Taiwan Strait and sailed through South China Sea to enforce the freedom of navigation, not just U.S. ships, okay, and Canadian ships too. Just a few months ago, Canadian ship and U.S. ship sailed through Taiwan Strait, and was followed by the Chinese ships.
But that's different from being involved in any crisis, isn't it? In what way do you say involved? In terms of their commercial ships being stopped and rerouted, or do you mean as in their troops coming?
I think even in their troops coming, because if you look at the agreement with Canada, it actually involves a visiting forces agreement. They're moving toward that direction, where if the Canadians decide to move troops to Philippines in whatever circumstances, I believe all of these are demonstration to China that Philippines is not alone. If there's any negotiation, that they should take Philippines seriously and not treat it like a little brother and treat Philippines as equal.
Okay, Ronan, is China going to be getting the message then that Tony's just outlined?
Yeah, and I actually have a slogan for that message, strength in numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're trying to demonstrate that behind me. You know, I have the U.S. and the U.S. treaty allies, but I agree that, you know, some very formal defense-related trainings is not very possible at the moment, but I think that some low-key defense cooperation is on the way. And you could see, you know, Tony just mentioned that visiting forces agreement will be written basically between Canada and the Philippines. And
so what does that mean exactly in terms of the forces being on the Philippines?
Actually, those are the agreement that before we deploy forces, there's agreement between two countries, how they're treated, okay? You know, as far as like tax-free status when you buy. It's the reason I know is because U.S. had that similar agreement for decades. So Canadians are getting those. That allows you to deploy forces with a pre-agreed formula on how those forces will be treated.
So the result is?
The result is, in case Canada decides to deploy, there's nothing else to negotiate. It's already there.
So nothing's standing in the way. They can just deploy immediately.
Just deploy. Yeah,
as fast
just
as
like U.S. forces goes over for exercises, just go there.
Yeah,
okay.
It's also a precondition for the ultimate mutual defense. So it's like basically allowing troops to visit each other's countries and enhancing readiness and some joint response capabilities. So when the contingents were to happen, then we're ready.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I just want to ask the very final question. Now, a Pulse Asia survey of 1,200 Filipinos found that they thought the top 3 countries that the Philippines should work with to resolve issues in the South China Sea are, unsurprisingly, the US on 75% of respondents, Australia on 43%, and Japan on 42% among the choice of top 3. On the other hand, China only had 10%, also not surprising. But did it surprise you, Tony, that Australia was 1% ahead, slightly ahead of Japan?
Actually not, you know. During World War II,
And very briefly.
the Japanese occupation of Japan left a very bad memory in a lot of Japanese mind, and they still study history.
Ronan, and yet Japan, since that history, has been supporting the Philippines, I would argue, in greater number and greater dollars, and for longer than Australia.
Japan has been there for a very long time, whereas Australians' participation in the region-related activities is relatively new.
Right.
Yeah. So like
recency theory.
Yeah, recency. Yeah. So basically, they look fresh. They seemingly are our new friends.
So most recently, last year's Balikatan shoulder-to-shoulder exercise, U.S., Australia, Philippines.
Right.
So recency
Yeah.
is a big issue.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to have wrapped it up there. Tony Hu and Ronan Fu, thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.